If you're here for the No Budget for Billionaires Town Hall, you are in the right spot. Gonna give it a couple of seconds before we invite our friend, our partner, Brian Pearson, to come on. And really, Brian, thank you so much. And thank you to North Shore for thinking about us putting this together. We're glad to be in it with you all tonight. Come on up.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, you've been very gracious through all of this. We'll give all the credit to Policy Matters. So yeah, we're looking good on numbers. We're ready to roll. Okay. So welcome everybody to our No Budget for Billionaires Town Hall. I'm Brian Pearson. I'm the head of the North Shore Federation of Labor. We're the organized voice of 80,000 working people across Greater Cleveland. I am super excited to be having this important conversation with Policy Matters and all of you. So thank you all for being here. Our goal at the AFL-CIO is to bring unions together to fight for good jobs, strong communities, and an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthy few. And the reason we put this town hall together is that the federal budget that's currently under consideration does not do good things for working people. It goes right at and threatens the things that working people rely on the most. That's healthcare, food assistance, and good jobs. And it gives more tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. It's not just unfair, it's dangerous. So I want to thank our guests for being here. I want to thank Policy Matters. I want to thank all of our panelists. We've got a great group that will be on tonight. And yeah, I think together we're going to send a clear message that budgets are moral documents, and this one fails working families. And so let's get ready to fight for a budget that puts people first, working people first. Do you want me to talk about the next step?
Yeah, Brian, what you got coming up on the
Okay.
first?
So look, we've been having and trying to schedule meetings with our senators, and a lot of stuff's happening with the budget, and I really think that we're going to see something passed out of the Senate this week. I don't know if we'll have a full bill or not. So next Tuesday, July 1st, we are going to do a rally, a No Budgets for Billionaire rally at 10 a.m. at the Free Stamp. Folks who have already signed up, and maybe somebody's going to be dropping the sign up link in the chat. Folks who already signed up, that all of that information's been updated. We'll make sure, if you signed up prior to this meeting, we didn't have a location, we didn't have many details. So that's all ready to go. We hope to see you there. We are going to be delivering a letter from the AFL-CIO that day to our senators, as well as some of the actions we'll be doing later on in the call. We'll have some letters that we'll deliver and some testimonials. So I think it's going to be super meaningful and coming at just the right time. So with that, Hannah.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for joining us and kicking this thing off. We are coming at you all right off the top with action, right? Like, we're going to provide a little bit of information. We're going to provide an opportunity to get some of your questions answered in the Q&A function. But we're also going to give you something to do about all of this that's heading your way. So thank you, North Shore. Thank you, Brian, for getting this rally together. I think it's an important message. We'll make sure folks have all that they need to sign up and to attend and be ready to go on the 1st and for whatever comes after. All right, you all. So again, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to learn. I do want to give a little hat tip to Rebecca, North Shore's political director, for also pitching in on this and keeping us moving, getting all the information out to us. And truly, let me just say, Policy Matters would not exist, quite literally, without North Shore and without the forward thinking of the leaders of North Shore and with labor. So when I say we are privileged to be here tonight, we absolutely mean it. So who is this talking head? All right, like who is this woman? So I'm Hannah Halbert. I'm the executive director here at Policy Matters Ohio. Policy Matters, we are a nonprofit. We're nonpartisan. We think everybody can have good ideas and bad ideas. And our core function, we want to make sure that this Ohio economy works for every single one of us, no exceptions. So we watch tax, we watch budget, and we watch business here in this state. And if you like what you hear and you want to learn more about us, these slides will include a link to our Saturday Stats newsletter. We try to make it funny. We try to keep it light. We try to make it shareable. So that's how to track us down if this works. Now, there's a lot going on. I get it. Between what's going on at the federal budget level, just internationally, here in Ohio, we're passing a budget, and all of y'all's lives and your work and your family, there is so much going on. And it's so easy to get lost in all of it. And let me just say this. I work at a think tank. I got a laptop, air conditioner, email job. And so for me to cheerlead about engagement, hey, I get it. That can be easy. You all are busy people with real lives in the real world. And I'm certain that trying to get elected representatives to do their job may not be the top of your priority list. But I just want to provide you all with some encouragement. That engagement, that accountability is truly the secret sauce of American democracy. It still is, it still works. As Pollyanna as that may seem, it truly is the thing coming together, acting collectively that can counteract the big money interest. So showing up here tonight, showing up on the first, taking some of these action steps, my goodness, what a commitment you're showing. Not just to these policies, to your family, to your friends, to your neighbors, but to this experiment that we're all engaged in. And so truly, what you're doing matters. It still matters. And as we go through here, get your questions, ask your questions, think about signing up and share this information to your friends, families, networks, and colleagues. All right, a little housekeeping. Then we'll get to the good stuff. You don't have to listen to me the whole night. Some logistics. So captions are available. So if you're finding it hard to follow just from listening, there is a caption button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You could hit that and you'll get the subtitles, the captions going. We will be sending the slides and probably more information than you ever actually want to handle. We're going to get it organized. We're going to make it easy for folks. So you will get this material. You will get the slides. So please think about sharing those out. This is a big room, right? Which is great. To try to make sure we're coordinating all the Q&As, we're using the Q&A function. That is a little square at the bottom of your screen, has a little question Q&A on there, question mark. Hit that, type your question in. We have folks who have joined us who are policy experts from labor, from organizations like ours, from other advocates, ready to answer your questions. So try to stump us. Send us your good ones, all right? That being said, if there's a question if we get stumped, we will do our best to get that answer to you in the follow-up email. We're not going to leave you hanging. And also, one more thing, this is a big room. So think about when you're sharing personal details, right? We're going to have a Zoom survey. We'll have our Policy Matters techno staff geniuses launch the Zoom survey so that if you want to share more details about your situation, what you're concerned about, what your family will experience from this budget, you can use that survey link. That will come to us and we will deliver that message to the senators with North Shore, with our friends in labor on the 1st. This will also be included in your follow-up materials. So please, you got time to think about it, share your story and connect. Hanging with me? Seem okay? All right, let me clear some screens. And remember, truly, I don't take it for granted that you're spending this time with us. And so please be a resource. Let us be a resource. If you see some of the follow-up material and have questions, get in touch with us. We are more than happy to connect and help out. Now, why are we doing this now? Oh my goodness. Because we are in the home stretch, you all. We are rounding, what, third base? What is it? That is the extent of my sports analogies, but we are in the home stretch. Leaders in the Senate are trying to get the bill, the big bad bill, passed by Thursday, trying to do a vote on Thursday. They're wanting to get this thing to Trump's desk by July 4th. I'm not certain they're going to make it. And the more that they hear from folks, the more they have to take things seriously. This is when the negotiations and the horse trading is happening. So right now, your voice matters. That's why the first matters. All of these actions, now is the time. We got some dates coming up. We got some recesses coming up. Legislators are going to want to come home for vacation. So there's a lot of pressure to get this thing done. And we need to make sure that those people who are representing us, who are representing people and working people here in this state, hear from you. And now, for the real stars of this production, right? These are the folks with the goods, the folks who know what is going on. Many of them may be familiar to you all. Again, we are delighted and honored to have them join. Here's the order of operations. We'll have folks come up, share a little bit about what they're seeing is harmful for working people and what to do about it. So, sound good? Use that Q&A, you all. We're here for you. And with that, I will invite, truly, the president of AFSCME Ohio Council 8, President Grayson. You want to come up and share with us a little bit about Medicaid and what's going on with Medicaid and how the changes in this big bad bill are going to impact.
Thank the North Shore Federation of Labor and Director Brian Pearson and Policy Matters Ohio for holding this No Budget for Billionaires town hall. And I want to echo Hannah and express my appreciation to all of the union members who are participating in this important call this evening. So I've been tasked with giving a few thoughts about the devastating Medicare cuts that have been proposed in the federal budget. So I'm going to begin by briefly describing the Medicaid program and identifying the services that it provides, talk about the scope of the proposed cuts in Ohio and across the nation, and the impact those cuts are going to have on Ohio families and our union members, and end by encouraging each person on this call to take the actions that are going to be suggested and to encourage your coworkers, your family members, and your friends to do the same. Now, most people have heard about the two major federally funded healthcare programs, Medicaid and Medicare, but many are confused about the difference between the two. Medicare is a supplemental health insurance program primarily covering people who are 65 years or older. The program is limited in scope, covering hospitalization costs, but not everyday medical expenses like routine medical exams, long-term care, and ancillary benefits like dental care. Medicaid, by contrast, is a more comprehensive governmental insurance program funded both by the federal government and by states. Medicare covers people with lower incomes and people who have disabilities, including parents and children of household incomes at the national poverty level, which in 2025 is a mere $32,150 a year. And with Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid now covers adults with incomes up to 138% of the poverty level, or a mere $21,000 a year. Medicaid is simply the largest health payer in the country. Nearly 72 million Americans, 1/5 of all Americans, receive Medicaid benefits. Medicaid covers 4 out of every 10 children in this country and 8 out of every 10 children living in poverty. Ohio elected to expand Medicaid with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and by doing that covered 770,000 Ohio adults in the Medicaid program. Now, in exchange for federal funding, federal Medicaid funding, states must commit to providing quote unquote essential health services, such as inpatient and outpatient medical services, doctor's visits, laboratory services, home health care, long-term health care. Adults over 65 and the disabled make up 1 of every 4 Medicaid enrollees, but account for more than 50% of Medicaid costs due to their higher rates of chronic illness and the need for long-term and home health care, making these populations particularly vulnerable to Medicaid cuts. According to a recent survey by a healthcare think tank, 2/3 of Americans say they know someone who has received Medicaid benefits, and 1/2 of Americans say that they themselves or someone close to them are receiving Medicaid benefits. So now you have some idea about the enormity of this program and why it's such a devastating, why any cuts to the program are so devastating to people across the country. In the federal budget, the Congress has now proposed slashing $880 billion from Medicaid over the next decade. That's $88 billion a year per year over the next 10 years. And these cuts will adversely affect 3 million Ohioans that are currently receiving Medicaid services and will eliminate healthcare coverage for the 770,000 adult Ohioans who got Medicaid coverage under Medicaid expansion. If these cuts go into effect, hundreds of thousands of Ohioans will lose healthcare coverage. More families will fall into poverty. Elderly Ohioans may no longer be able to access nursing home care. In addition, more Ohio families will rely on emergency rooms again as their primary source of healthcare for themselves and for their children, leading to longer wait lines in the ER, overwhelming urban safety net hospitals, and leading to costly and unnecessary hospital stays. At the same time, rural hospitals, which are particularly dependent on Medicaid funding, will close, creating even more healthcare deserts in Ohio than already exists. Rural Ohioans may have to travel an hour or more in an emergency simply to get hospital services. These outcomes are not projections, they're not predictions. These were the conditions in Ohio prior to the passage of the Affordable Care Act. Federal Medicaid dollars also fund locally provided healthcare services in Ohio, like behavioral health services such as outpatient counseling services, psychiatric medical services, residential drug treatment programs. It also funds ancillary medical services like home health care, assisted living programs, home modification costs, medical equipment and supplies, transportation services, and free medical screening for infants and children. So these are critical medical services that are funded primarily by Medicaid. In total, federal funding contributes 65% of Ohio's Medicaid program. In order to make up that kind of funding deficit, Ohio will either need to raise taxes, which it is unlikely to do with this legislature, cut the Medicaid services drastically that I've outlined, or cut other important public services like education funding. In addition to eliminating the services they provide, AFSCME members in Ohio will be deeply affected by these cuts. Ohio Council 8 members include hospital workers, nursing home employees, community health service providers, Medicaid eligibility specialists, job placement specialists, drug treatment counselors, and many more. All of these jobs will be subject to job elimination, layoffs, and furloughs should these cuts go into effect. And many of these services are likely to be privatized, never to come back into the public sector again, as employers seek to cut costs. Finally, the loss of federal funding flowing into Ohio, the loss of the healthcare coverage for hundreds of thousands of Ohioans, and the significant job losses that will occur because of these cuts will have a negative impact on Ohio's economy. Medicaid funding drives employment in Ohio's healthcare sector, generates local tax revenue, saves money for enrollees, allowing them to purchase other goods and services, and makes Ohioans healthier, allowing them to work. All of this economic activity will sharply decline should these Medicaid cuts be enacted. AFSCME, like a lot of unions, is taking action to stop these Medicaid cuts from being enacted. Our union is conducting town halls like this one. We are engaged in email, petition, and postcard campaigns, and we are making calls to Congress and to Ohio's senators. If enough of us push back, I believe that we can have an impact on these cuts. So making calls to Senators John Husted and Bernie Moreno, telling them how these Medicaid cuts will impact you and your family, and telling them to vote no is an important step. Once you make those calls, we're asking you to ask your family and friends to do the same. And then join the North Shore Federation of Labor on January 1st for the No Budget for Billionaires rally, and help them march their petitions over to the senators' offices. And ask your coworkers to come to that rally as well. It's time to stand up for Ohioans and Ohio working families. And we can do that by taking the actions that we're going to talk about this evening. Thank you for all you do for your members and for Ohioans each and every day.
President Grayson, thank you so much. I want to just highlight something that you talked about. You know, we often hear Medicaid just, oh, this is about health. This is about making sure families, kids, people all over the state with additional needs get the basics, get basic healthcare coverage, get access to our healthcare system. This is also about our economy. You know, there is a list of hospitals who are highly threatened should these cuts go through. 11 of them are here in Ohio, and that's jobs, that's reduction of access to health, that's going to have substantial impacts in those communities for generations. And so thank you for sharing that information. We're going to drop in to the chat, to your resources that you all are going to get some information on doing some of those calls. Like, how can you make calls and let your senators know, say no to these cuts. Our Ohio economy, our Ohio workers, the health of Ohioans is too precious. It's too precious to cut for tax cuts for billionaires. So we're going to drop that Action Network link into the chat. I encourage folks personalize it. You know, like your senators may be getting a bunch of form letters, but if they can see that this is a human doing this, a constituent, that's going to matter. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And just to point out, we can make a change. Remember, the House passed by one vote, right? This matters now. So thank you so much. All right, you all use that Q&A if you have questions that are coming up during the conversation. And with that, we're going to invite David Kowalski, who has had a front row seat to much of the things happening in DC. David is the Assistant Political Director with the United Food and Commercial Workers. We're going to hear about the SNAP cuts. I think this is something that folks are just now really getting a handle on of how substantial this could be, not only in terms of food access here in Ohio, but in terms of like food deserts. This has the potential to wipe out access, not just for folks that are on SNAP that need the extra help, not just for those low-wage workers who need that extra help, but for communities. So David, do you want to come on up and share with us a little information on SNAP?
Sure, absolutely. I would love to. First off, just let me start this by saying thank you to Brian from the North Shore CLC for inviting me, and to Hannah and all the great folks at Policy Matters for hosting this space and providing us this space where we can have these conversations. Also wanted to thank my locals in Ohio who've been doing all this work and have been absolute rock stars on the ground. Local 75 down in Southwest Ohio, Local 880 in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, and Local 1059 out of the Columbus area. They have just absolutely been rocking it, so I really appreciate all the great work they've been doing. A little bit about who we are at UFCW. We are the largest private sector union in the country with over 1.3 million members. And most of those members work in food processing and grocery stores. So they represent all of the spots in the chain where we get our food, except for the growing process for the most part. So we know a lot about SNAP. One of the things that we're really worried about with the upcoming cuts that are being proposed to the SNAP program is what is going to happen in communities. Right now, the cuts are currently proposed will amount to $285 billion over the next 10 years. According to the Congressional Budget Office, that's going to equal out to about 3.2 million Americans who will lose food security as they curtail it. We are also extremely worried about it, as Hannah raised, about some food deserts that this could create. A lot of people have heard about that term over the last decade, and we've been doing a lot to try to fix those food deserts. This will worsen that dramatically. And for our folks, SNAP provides hours in the grocery stores. That's work where people are going to be stocking shelves for you, checking you out. And then also work for our folks in food processing and meat packaging plants. A lot of those folks walk to work. So when we're talking about the ripple effects that we're going to feel about this, you know, it's going to be more than just the folks down in Heinens and Giant Eagle, because this is going to have huge ripple effects to the people who live in the community all over Ohio, especially. SNAP puts food on the table for millions of Americans, most of whom are children, seniors, veterans, or the disabled. One of the things that they're throwing around right now is adding more strict working requirements. We know that is not what they're actually trying to do. They are using this work requirement idea as a way to kick people out of the program. There are already work requirements in SNAP. Just to repeat that, there are already work requirements in SNAP. If you get SNAP, you're working, or there's a really good reason why you're not. Maybe you're taking care of multiple children. And we actually sat down with Senator Slotkin last week, and she told us, because she sits on the Farm Bill, so she's in on a lot of these conversations about cutting SNAP, that what they're also looking to do is to potentially make folks re-sign up for the SNAP program every 6 months. And they're hoping that people will just start falling off by attrition. Again, as the people who work in the grocery stores, we're extremely worried about that, about how that's going to affect our members in grocery stores. They have to see some heartbreaking things every day right now. We are very worried about what's going to happen when somebody who has a, couple of weeks worth of groceries pulls up and realizes at that moment that they will not be getting their groceries that day to feed their children. It's going to be heartbreaking. Our members are likely, potentially going to have to deal with irate customers as well. So these are all things we're really fighting hard to try and prevent. Some facts that are really important to us at UFCW, 80% of all SNAP benefits are spent in traditional grocery stores. So anybody who's getting SNAP is going into a brick and mortar store and using that money right there. Cuts to SNAP will mean less food, and that impacts every grocery store across the country. Grocery store will lose hours and wages, and beneficiaries will go hungry. Members who live in the community are really going to be hurt by this. So what have we at UFCW been doing about this since probably March? we launched a campaign both on the ground and in the legislative halls. So far, we have met in person with over 12 congressional representatives and 7 senators from across the country. I know I personally traveled back to Ohio and met with Chantel Brown and David Taylor, both of whom will likely see store closures in their districts. And we wanted to sit down with them and tell them about that and make them aware that this is something that could really affect a lot of your constituents. And we are also in the process of sitting down with both Senators Moreno and Husted right now as well, trying to hopefully get them on the line before this bill is voted on next week. From the political perspective, we have sent over 182,000 text messages to our members to get them activated. From those text messages, we've had 2,250 members come forward and send a total of 6,476 emails to senators and congressmen across the country. In Ohio alone, we sent 237 emails to both Senators Husted and Moreno. Very proud of that. And then I was also down just south of Cincinnati a couple weeks ago in a meatpacking plant that we represent, and we were collecting postcards to send to other senators. Doing that work, we were able to get over 1,500 postcards signed and sent out to 5 different senators. All of them sit on the Ag Committee. So what I'm going to ask of all of you right now is to please follow the link that was just put in the chat. That is going to lead you to our UFCWvotes.org page, where we have a SNAP form letter that we're hoping to send to as many senators and congresspeople in Ohio as we can get. I see we have just under 50 folks on the call right now, so hopefully we will have 50 more signed up by the end of tonight. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you for joining us. Those numbers are really remarkable. And I think folks are, like with Medicaid, I think that we often think of, oh, well, this is about the families and the people who are using the program, right? Like how damaging that's going to be. But these programs have a big role in local economies. It's just true. And so if we're seeing neighborhood markets in both rural Ohio and urban Ohio struggling, shutting down, that's going to have huge impacts for so many families. And, you know, one of the things that we know is these cuts are being called a lot of things. Work requirements, this redetermination deal, the cost shift of the SNAP program to the states. All of that is a cut. We can dress it up. We can make it wonkier than what we at Policy Matters would be able to tolerate even. The fact of the matter is that fewer people who are eligible are going to be able to qualify for those benefits and get the help that they need. And our communities are to be harmed for it. So we're going to include it's already in the chat, you all. There you go. We've got the action alert to stand up for SNAP in there. Please sign, share, let folks know what's going on and how these are going to have this is going to have ripple effects out into our community. So Dave, thank you for joining. Hat tip to Rod, who's joined us to answer questions. Folks, if you've got questions on these programs, any of the content, have at that Q&A. We would love to engage and get them answered. And now I want to invite up friend of Policy Matters, Alyssa Johnson. Alyssa is the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Power a Clean Future, Ohio. And Alyssa is going to come up and just share some resources. We know the big budget bill, the big bad bill is moving. There's also lots of cuts and threats to the infrastructure, climate investments that have been made into our state that are directly improving communities, making the state more efficient, and showing up in the form of high quality jobs. All right. So Alyssa, if you want to come up and share a little bit of resources, and I will say this is a little bit of a teaser that we hope to keep putting out some more information on in the future. So watch this space. Welcome, Alyssa.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me here. I'm here to chat just a little bit more about who Power a Clean Future Ohio is, and then share some impacts to the Inflation Reduction Act and clean energy tax credits and investments that we've been tracking through the reconciliation bill. So to start, Power a Clean Future Ohio, we are a statewide nonprofit that provides comprehensive direct support to local governments in the form of sustainability and climate action planning, grant writing, data analysis, technical assistance, and project implementation support for clean energy investments. And the clean energy tax credits are made possible through the direct pay provision of the Inflation Reduction Act, and those have been a game changer for Ohio. They have driven new job creation and investment in renewable energy projects, stimulating local economies and diversifying the state's energy portfolio. These tax credits have supported Ohio's clean energy transition, leading to lower energy costs for consumers, powering growth in manufacturing and long-term economic development. These clean energy tax credits that are at risk right now as well have been a critical instrument in positioning Ohio as a leader in the clean energy sector and the #1 state in the nation for solar manufacturing, with 2 of the country's largest solar manufacturers being based right here in Ohio. Some more information on some local impacts to this. So these tax credits, they're a critical economic tool that are helping us build resilient and a flourishing economy. And also they're creating new career pathways for Ohioans. And one of these examples is Cuyahoga County's most recent Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Fund. That is a partnership with the city of Painesville and the city of Cleveland, which would put 63 megawatts of renewable energy across brownfield lands and landfills up in this area. This particular program will create 136 construction jobs and 17 jobs for reskilled workers from the coal-fired power plant for solar and battery storage. This also includes 100 pre-apprenticeship positions and 6 staff that are going to be hired across our municipal governments. This project is able to do all of this by leveraging $60 million worth of federal tax credits through direct pay. And so we are really tracking and focusing on the impacts to our local governments and our communities through sustainability and climate lens. And so this budget reconciliation bill threatens local Ohio communities by reducing funding for clean energy initiatives, which could also lead to increased energy costs for local governments and residents alike, lost job opportunities, and barriers for them to achieve their sustainability goals. And some quick stats just on the clean energy sector in Ohio. That is a significant source of job growth in Ohio, with 13,000 new clean energy jobs in 2024. So cuts to funding and incentives could really result in lost opportunities for new jobs in sustainable industries, which limit local employment prospects. So we know that investment in renewable energy often leads to long-term stable job creation, and a slowdown in this sector could really stall economic growth. In addition to just general sustainability within the renewable energy sector, we also know that cuts and threats to clean energy and sustainability support from the federal government have a huge impact on our community health and wellness. So reduced investment in clean energy and sustainability projects can continue to lead to reliance on fossil fuels, which just increases pollution associated health risks for residents. So thinking about air quality impacts. And right now, if you all are experiencing these heat waves, cuts to ability to do resilience hubs and climate funding to make our infrastructure stronger and our grid more resilient are all at risk through this reconciliation bill. And so local governments, we know, need the resources to implement climate adaptation strategies. And without federal support, communities are going to struggle to enhance their resilience, which has a direct impact on residents. I know that my power has gone out a couple times in the past couple of weeks, and I am fortunate enough that I am able to pay to replace my groceries. But that is not the case for every Ohioan. And so impacts of this bill as it relates to climate and clean energy work really touches our constituents and our community members at the local level. And so we know that this reconciliation bill will likely decrease federal funding for incentives for clean energy projects, which just slow down our ability to lead on manufacturing and our ability to create renewable energy sources in local communities. And so the PCFO team, one of the things that we do and what we can offer is one, if you are a city staffer or a resident that wants your community to join PCFO, we are completely free for local governments to join. We have support from philanthropy. So all of our resources for local governments that then impact our residents are completely free. So would happy to chat with anybody about joining our membership. But in addition, we have a bi-weekly community newsletter that we send out tracking all sorts of climate and clean energy news. Relative to Ohio, we highlight clean energy projects that are going on across the state as well. And one of our main goals for this upcoming year is to also get deeper into helping our local governments think about workforce opportunities and really building that bridge between good, high-paying jobs in the renewable energy and clean energy sector. I am happy to answer any questions that might pop up, and happy to also share any of these statistics that we have around the clean energy economy for y'all after the fact. And thanks so much for having me.
Alyssa, thank you so much for that. This is one of those issues that I think is flown under the radar a little bit, unless you're one of those workers working or anticipating working on those jobs. I mean, this is so much of that federal investment came down to the states with green and blue strings attached. That money is good for communities. It makes our energy infrastructure more secure, more sustainable, and it is good for working people because so much of it is knit together with labor, with the trades, that these are pathways and work for folks that are going to be doing high quality union jobs, growing union apprenticeships. And so this is what seems to be pretty wonky on these tax credits is going to have a huge impact on this work. So Alyssa, thank you for sharing that. Policy Matters and Power Clean Future, we will be putting out a lot more on this, and we hope to build out this community as well. So you all please bug Alyssa. Bug Alyssa. All right. Thank you, Alyssa, so much. It's huge. It's huge for our state and so many of the working people in the trades, IEBW folks, in building out this sustainable high road industry and sector here in Ohio. On the chopping block, you all. It's pretty bleak. Y'all hanging with us? It's a lot. And it's a lot of really negative stuff. And I know it's hard. It's hard to stay positive. It's hard to say like that we're going to have an impact. But let me just, before we get into the last conversation, I just want to underscore something. This budget process and what we're seeing at the federal level, not normal. Not normal, you all. The normal rules of passing legislation and passing a budget, they've really been subverted to try to get this big bad bill through because it couldn't pass if they had to follow the rules. It couldn't pass. And so every time you call and make it a little bit harder for a senator, for a representative to make that vote, it has an impact. We've seen some mitigation happening just over the course of the day. It absolutely matters. And one thing that the next speaker, who to many Ohioans may need no introduction, is going to talk about is how at the heart of this bill, it's about this enormous transfer of wealth. And the process that we're experiencing with it, the speed that it's moving through, the detachment of our senators, our representatives from their constituents, from hearing us out, what we've experienced, the empty seats at town halls, maybe you're getting the form letter when you're sending it in, right? Not normal. And that process, just like it's a transfer of wealth, this is a transfer of power from constituents to partisan politics and backrooms. And so this effort that you're making, whether it's filling in an Action Network letter, making that phone call and leaving the message, or showing up on the first, sending a comment through the Zoom survey link that we're going to share, all of that is going to have an impact. I can't lecture labor on the importance of collective action. And that's what you all are building whenever you're taking these steps together. All right, home stretch, you all. Amy, ready? You all, I'm delighted to bring up Amy Hanauer, who is the Executive Director of the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. More importantly, Amy is the founder of Policy Matters Ohio. So anytime we get to bring Amy home and put her in front of a hometown crowd, it is a delight. And you may have seen her, if you're on the Twitter or whatever Twitter is called now, you may have seen her getting her arithmetic put to the test with Senator Warren recently. So Amy has been in the thick of it. And we're going to talk taxes. Why is all of these cuts happening? Why are we going after people, communities, working people, folks in the states that need a leg up, not a cut? Why are we doing all this? And Amy, what also about that no tax on tips stuff? Are we sure this isn't about working people? All right, Amy, come on in.
All right, great. Thank you so much. It is always so great to come back to Northeast Ohio and to do anything with Policy Matters. I couldn't possibly be more proud of the way Hannah has led this organization and taken it forward. So I'm Amy Hanauer. I run an organization called the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. You can find all the numbers I'm going to talk about today at itep.org. But you know, Hannah's right. This is the biggest upward transfer of wealth of any piece of legislation in history. So what we are doing with this bill is taking resources from low income and working class people and sending them to millionaires and billionaires. And so it would cut services to poor and middle class families, reduce revenue for the things we all need that were talked about earlier on this call by Sean and Dave, and provide large tax cuts primarily to the richest Americans. Also, by the way, provide tax cuts to foreign investors. And these elements mean that the bill would dramatically increase inequality. So most of what I'm going to talk about is just the tax part of the bill. As you've been hearing, the tax part is accompanied by a lot of spending cuts on healthcare and food. In fact, the biggest cuts in history to healthcare and food programs. But most of my numbers are going to be particularly about the tax parts of this. And I am going to share some slides because, as Hannah said, I recently got a chance to testify before seven senators. Try saying that 5 times fast. And so I had some charts at the ready for you all. So I'm going to start by just saying the richest 1% of Americans would receive a total of $124 billion in net tax cuts in 2026. And the middle 20%, so a group that's 20 times as large, would receive less than half that much. And I'm going to start sharing these slides now if I can make the old PowerPoint work. So hold on 1 second here. Okay, play from start, and then I'm gonna say, this might be a little harder than I thought. You might have to look at this kind of funny way. I'm gonna share my screen and show the slides. Okay, share. Yeah, so I might not be able, maybe I can make this work. Just hang with me for 1 more second here. Yes, all right, good, continue to share. Good, all right. So ITEP's my organization. You can always find us online. And this is the biggest upward transfer of wealth in history. So what you are seeing here is that the $124 billion that I mentioned earlier that goes to the richest 1% exceeds the amount going to the entire bottom 60% of Americans. And you can kind of see it on this chart that 69% of the tax cuts go to the richest 20%. And in fact, 44% of those tax cuts go to just the top 5% of people. The poorest fifth get just 1% of the tax cuts. And you can see that the second 20% and the middle 20% don't get much either. What does this amount to? For the richest 1% of people, this is about $70,000 a year, each year. And it's many, many times more than any other income group gets. And again, even foreign investors would benefit more than low-income Americans from this piece of legislation. Now, these numbers here don't consider tariffs. And we know, I'm talking to a labor audience, I know that well-crafted tariffs, when accompanied by smart industrial development, kind of like those green tax credits that are going away, I know that they can play a big role in a manufacturing strategy. But the approach of this administration could not be further from that. The Trump tariffs are mercurial. They sort of change all the time. They're inconsistent, and they don't have any kind of strategy associated with them at all. And so those tariffs alone would offset most of the tax cuts for about 80% of Americans. It's kind of a wash for most of us, low income, middle income, even upper middle income people. Those tax cuts are kind of a wash. For the lowest income 40%, these people down here at the bottom, the tax cuts are actually much lower than the change that they would pay in their prices from the tariffs. So this is, in addition to the spending cuts that Sean and Dave described, this is a way that low and middle income people are going to be paying more for their basic needs and their groceries, while the wealthiest walk away with the big tax cuts. So as Hannah said, the bill includes some kind of high profile provisions that get a lot of media attention. So among those are temporary provisions that eliminate taxes on some tips, they eliminate some taxes on some overtime pay, and they reduce taxation of some of the income that elderly people get. And then there's also some car loan write-offs, okay? If you combine all of those things together, that core campaign platform, the stuff that got so much attention on the campaign trail, collectively, they constitute less than 4% of the cost of this bill. So what that means is that 96% of the cost of this very, very expensive bill is going to tax cuts to wealthy people and corporations. And in fact, 11% of it, so more than twice as much as that core campaign platform that got so much attention, is actually new business tax cuts. And again, just got to emphasize, it's paid for by the biggest cuts to healthcare and food assistance in American history. Now, I'll just say a little bit about the overtime provision, because I want you all to back up and remember why we have overtime, right? Overtime is to encourage employers to set reasonable hours and to enable people to take care of the other things in their life that happen outside of their workday, dealing with their kids, seeing the people they love in their lives, helping take care of their elderly parents, maybe even, having some fun once in a while, getting some rest, right? But we know that sometimes you can't get everything done in the 40-hour work week, and that's why we have overtime. It's to encourage the employers to set reasonable hours, but it's also to say, if you're an employer and you haven't planned well enough to get the work done with the workforce that you have, you're going to have to pay a little more and make it more costly for employers, because obviously you've got some compelling need that's forcing people to work 50 hours a week. So if they demand overtime, they should pay for it. This shifts that cost from the employer to the rest of us as taxpayers. And it says that the public sector is going to bear the cost. If your employer, if Ford needs you to work extra hours, if Chrysler needs you to work extra hours, instead of them paying for that, the rest of us are going to pay for that. And that, that ends up really messing with the incentives. It also provides them with a really big incentive. Instead of hiring new people to enable them to, if they've got 80 hours of work a week, instead of hiring an additional person, just just have the person work extra because it doesn't really take much off of their back. So this runs counter to all of that. If they really wanted to help, workers who work overtime, there's a whole bunch of better ways to do it. And I know Policy Matters has written about all of them. A lot of this comes from the Economic Policy Institute, but they could increase the overtime rate from 1.5 times base pay to 1.75. They could reduce the old overtime salary threshold to make more workers automatically eligible. They could end carve-outs that exclude agricultural workers and domestic workers, and they could bolster labor enforcement, but they don't want to do any of that, right? Now, the other provision, and again, remember, these only make up 4% of that huge cost that we're going to be paying for decades. The other provision is exempting tips from taxes. And again, that sounds appealing, but it would help very few workers. Only about 5% of people earning less than $25 an hour are in traditionally tipped occupations. And for a lot of that 5%, they don't actually earn enough to pay any taxes. So giving them a break on their taxes doesn't really, it doesn't really help them at all. They pay taxes, they pay sales taxes, they pay property taxes, but they pay the payroll tax, but they don't pay income taxes because they don't earn enough. It would expand the use of tip work, leading to consumers being asked to tip on many more purchases. And again, like the other provision, it lets the employer off the hook, pushing the responsibility onto the consumer. So, if you have liked being asked to tip on all kinds of new things that you didn't used to have to tip for, this would put that on overdrive. I'm not going to talk about the car loan provision, just to say that even with this break, if you combine up the tariffs and the break that you'd get on car loans, almost everybody would be paying more for, say, a typical $40,000 car. And this just shows different kinds of taxpayers and how they're all paying more. I want to just very quickly say that school vouchers get this unprecedented 100% tax credit under this bill. No other cause that you contribute to would get this same kind of tax credit. Most other things get a 35% tax credit. And there's also like a really special tax shelter in there that I can talk about in the Q&A. I think I'm running a little bit low on time, so I'll just say that one other thing that I want to mention is that there are big cuts in this bill, and a lot of those cuts are cost a lot of money. The individual income tax cuts cost $2.18 trillion over a decade. There's new business tax breaks that cost $1.21 trillion over a decade. Now, this is this isn't as big of a cost, but I just want to say that on the estate tax, we used to make sure that about 2% of estates were big enough to pay an estate tax. We now have it that a person can inherit $29.999 million before anyone has to pay any taxes, even a penny in estate tax. And this is already at historic lows. We have less than 0.08% of estates that are big enough to incur that tax, and they want to make it worse. So this just gives you a sense of the cuts and the costs, and you can see that these new business tax cuts, which are in mustard, are much bigger than that core campaign platform that they spent so much time talking about. And I will just wrap up here with this cartoon that I really liked. If any of you remember Schoolhouse Rock and you remember the Big Beautiful Bill, well, this is a big beautiful bill that is mostly about cutting Medicaid. So that's a quick summary of some of what I told the senators last week. And I would love to answer any questions in the Q&A, but it is so great to be back among friends in Ohio. And I really want to thank all of you for everything you're doing to try to slow this down.
Amy, thank you for joining us. And, we called this the No Budget for Billionaires because this tax scheme, where there's a little bit of a sweetener, one to make people look over here at this no tax on tips, the overtime changes, while so much is being shifted to the most wealthy, the very tippy top. And Amy didn't even get into the corporate impacts of these taxes. We can share some of that out with you all. Truly, we talk about the cost shift and the tax shift here in Ohio. The big bad bill is the tax shift on steroids, right? And so whenever we're confronted with these questions of like, why are we losing all of the healthcare coverage? Why are we losing SNAP? Why aren't we taking care of working people? Why is it harder for people today to have the same kind of quality of life that maybe they remember their parents or grandparents having? Why aren't our communities and our neighborhoods able to be strong, to get the kinds of investments that we used to make? Why can't we clean up lead? It's because we have shifted the cost and shifted taxes so dramatically in this country and in this state. That matters. That makes it harder for everyday people, working people like you and me, your friends and family, to make it go, to make it work. So you all, we've talked about calls, we've talked about emails, we've talked about the rally on the 1st at the Stamp in Cleveland. And I want to put in a plug. You can also set up your own meeting with your senator representative. All right. I'm sure if you're part of the labor community, you might be organizing with your siblings to get some of that communication done. We know North Shore has been taking action and getting those meetings in. If you want support for that, reach out to us. We have staff who can help, can walk you through it, the process of how that is. We're going to send you a little information just on the basics of that. But if you want to have that outreach, you, your friends, family, your neighbors, your union siblings, want to have that engagement, we are a resource. We are going to be here for you all to help make that happen. All right, home stretch. And Kate are coming in clutch in the chat there with an email address of where to bug us here at Policy Matters if you're interested in setting up some of those meetings. All right. You all have hung with us all afternoon. I'm so grateful to North Shore, to our panelists. I feel like a round of applause is totally worth it. Some really shocking information, but great avenues to take action and make a difference. We will be sending you all of these materials in one place through the email that you signed up for. If you have questions on that, you can find us at Policy Matters Ohio, and we will be sure to get those answered. I know the Q&A, it's been really quiet tonight. So if you all are thinking on stuff or you have follow-up after this, reach out, don't be strangers. And so with that, I think we got it. You all have a delightful evening. Do something to cleanse the palates for all of this, and then wake up tomorrow and make those phone calls and send those emails. Seriously, a delight to be with you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks so much. Brian, do you have final thoughts?
No, just thank you, everybody. Appreciate folks hanging around. And let's go out there and get it. The time's running out, but we've got a chance to do it. So thank you again.
Cheers. We can get after it, you all. We got it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Great to see you all.
See you on the next one.